Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023. Good evening. Barry Funkhauser here with Joe.
Hey, guys.
And we'd like to welcome all of the new people who are listening here, who are striving to find content now that the world is in a writer's strike.
Oh, boo. Come on. We're with the writers. Come on.
So welcome, everybody. This is an unscripted program. Today, we have a special guest, Joe. We're talking to a legend. He's a music man. He's a record guy, and he's got a new album out, Paul Wexler's Wexwax. He's got a new album, Swept Away.
Wait, we got Paul Wexler on?
I know, man. Welcome.
How did you get Paul Wexler on?
Well, you know, I had some great publicists. That's how it actually happened.
Well, Barry's got a great publicist. I didn't know we had this kind of pull, Barry.
So you have stories upon stories. I mean, it goes back to the early 60s when you were in the North Bay, Oakland area. And I believe you started in radio and went to the record industry. Can you give Joe a little brief synopsis of your story?
Sure. My very first job in the business ever, I got it through Bonnie Simmons, who was working with KSAN at the time. She's been with KPFK, I think KPFK in the Bay since then. And she gave me, I got a job going through Bill Graham's Jefferson Airplane live tapes from the year and a half, 2 years when he managed the airplane. So I heard like every live show that they did between like 66, just before Signe Anderson left the band, up to the middle of 68 when they were getting insanely good. And
what were you looking for in those live tracks? Were you just trying to compile a live album at that point?
No, he just wanted them to be cataloged. He wanted a list of the songs. He just wanted them to be cataloged, basically.
Those are gold now. If we had those live records now,
yeah, exactly. I cringe at the music that's gone through my hands that I no longer have. And then the next thing I did for KSAN, Bonnie Simmons and her then husband Bob Sims had done a lot of interviews and also gotten tapes from the Fillmore, the Matrix, the Avalon, all the great ballrooms from the San Francisco psychedelic era. And Bonnie knew that I was a fan of that music. And so they hired me to take their tapes and sort through them, pick the best performances, and then put together it was 48 hours of programming, continuous programming that we put together, this show called What Was That? And some of the greatest music out of San Francisco. There was a version of Ball and Chain with Janis Joplin and Big Brother that was just, it was crazy how good it was.
Yeah. So, Paul, I mean, you didn't walk off the street and get into the industry. Who's your dad? Tell
well, my father is the great record man, producer, and also he was one of the senior partners at Atlantic Records. Now, Jerry Wexler. Now, he wasn't the founder. He came in a few years, 5-6 years after it was founded, but he certainly was central to so much that went on at Atlantic between, when he joined in the early 50s and when he left in the mid 70s. I mean, the lists of artists that he signed, including Led Zeppelin and Aretha Franklin, Sam and Dave, but he and Ahmed were like brothers, and together they were one of the few R&B indies that didn't go belly up in the 60s and ended up being, one of the great labels that we recognize as one of the majors now, Atlantic Records.
Yeah, not a lot of people can coin phrases.
Yes.
But your pop coined rhythm and blues. That's cool.
Yes. Well, back then they called the urban or the African American chart, they called it race music in the 40s and 30s on Billboard. And after the war, that just started to get a very bad odor to it,
Yeah, rhythm and blues is a much better explanation of the music. So I love the job that you had at the record label where you were quality control, where you had to go through vinyl records and make sure that they don't skip.
That's right. I had to make sure they didn't skip. I was in almost every pressing plant in America, and I understood, how to try to improve the quality of the records. Warner's had just shifted their production from Columbia, which was the gold standard when vinyl records were still being mass produced, to Capitol, which wasn't quite as good quality wise, but was a less expensive for their clients per unit. And
cheap, right?
And so that's how I got my job. And I went to Capitol and I said, you guys have to produce test pressings. And they go, well, all the test pressing shows is that one press and one record is being properly made. It doesn't really show anything about the entire run. And I said, look, the artist has to know that you're capable of making a decent record.
Oh, yeah.
That's why you have to send test pressings. And so that's the job that I started doing.
So with your dad's experience and you growing up in the music industry and then taking this job doing quality control for vinyl, did that give you the ear for producing then?
I mean, a lot of my ear came from my dad, I think, just training wise and maybe even genetically. Some of it also was having to listen very carefully. Neil Young was very concerned, very involved with what his vinyl would sound like. And so back in the day, you would cut an acetate, which would be like you're cutting the record on a softer material. Mm-hmm. And that is the perfect version when it's properly cued, properly cut, properly mastered of how your record's being transferred to discs, to the disc medium. And so Neil wanted the vinyl to be exactly like the disc, which is almost impossible. Yeah. Okay. But the first record I worked for Neil, I'll tell you this one, the Decade record, which came out in 76. And it was that 3-record set. It was a great record. And I get a phone call and it was David Briggs, not the Nashville David Briggs, not the keyboard player, but the David Briggs, who was a record producer who produced a lot of Neil's records. And he goes, Paul, this is David Briggs. And just then there's a noise like the phone's being slammed against the wall. And then Neil's on the phone and he's yelling at me. He's going, this is Neil Young and I want my, expletive deleted, records now. And I said, well, Mr. Young, of course I can send you your record immediately. But my thought is that if there's something really obviously defective about it, if there's a skip or if there's some heavy bad noise on it, wouldn't you rather me go through them first and make sure you're not going to waste your time with them? And he goes, oh, okay. And
just as simple as that. He just didn't really think through that process, huh?
And so it took me years to get his production time down from 6 months just to approve the test pressings to a normal 2 to 3 months. And it got to the point where he actually trusted me both as someone who was not going to just push it through to get it out and someone who also had the ears to match what he wanted on his records. He trusted me to approve test pressings, which I can tell you that for Neil to trust someone at Warner Brothers to that extent was a rare thing at that point in time.
Okay, and what age were you, if I could ask that, Paul?
I started the gig when I was 23.
Okay, so how much pressure were you under? It's like, oh my gosh, now I have to use my ears. Like, you have, to this day, Neil Young is very particular about his sounds. He hates MP3s and digital media. So
I just had this view of things that to the extent that I could, it was my job to help the artist, okay? It was my job to try to get them what they wanted as much as I could. And that was always what I tried to do.
Okay, so flash forward to your stint as the sparkle in your father's eye. You're now a record man for Atlantic Records. Is that right? In the 90s, where everything, you had your own musical legacy of...
I can tell you that between what we're talking about now, I had produced a lot of records. But then I ran into a period where I was cold, and I actually was out of the business for a while, and I took a job at Atlantic. Now, my father hadn't been at Atlantic when I worked there for over 15 years. And the truth is that I took a job because I needed a job, and the job I took was writing press materials. Okay, I wrote most of the bios and press releases for a 5-year period at Atlantic. And I wrote for during a period where metal was just fading. Atlantic had been a big metal between like 86 and 90. They'd been a big metal label. But when I got there, the metal thing had faded. Phil Collins was carrying the label. And
take me home, because I don't remember.
Phil Collins is a treasure. You just be nice to him, Barry.
Listen, yeah, but things were changing for sure.
A drummer having that kind of success as the front man in a band is a very rare thing.
Oh yeah,
but and his songs are great. But
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I had to write like press releases and bios for Wind Beneath My Wings, and also some. I wrote the first bio for Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh, nice.
And I remember their first single, Sex Type Thing. I don't know if you remember that record.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite records.
No way I remember that at all.
I know you shouldn't have worn that dress. And so
I listened to that album this weekend, actually.
And I'm interviewing them. And I said to the lead singer, I go, what's this song about? It sounds like you're saying a girl should be attacked because she's dressing too sexy. What is that song about? And he goes, no, we hate the character in this song. And so MTV was about to reject the video because of this very issue. And so I immediately put that in the front of the bio, that this character in Sex Type Thing is actually somebody that they're trying to say is a jerk, you know? And guess what? They gave me a platinum record for doing that.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
That's so cool. Is it hanging up nearby you right now?
Yes, it is.
I love that. How many of those do you have nearby you?
I mean, I have 3 from Neil Young. And I've got this one from, now some of the records that I worked on that went platinum or gold from Warner's, like the Grateful Dead compilation I made, What a Long Strange Trip It's Been. A record I compiled with no input from anyone whatsoever. And I also art directed it when I was 24. And they're still selling it now.
It's like the ultimate compilation disc. Like
everybody has that. When I went to UC Santa Barbara, literally everybody had that album.
Yeah. And like I say, I'll tell you the story behind that. I was in the basement doing quality control, looking at grooves and thinking, this is not all I want out of the music business. I want something more out of the business. And so I thought there was this one tape that all the Deadheads used to trade from Harper College, 1970. I thought if I could get the clean board tape on that and release it, Warner's could sell 1 million of those, 2 million. And so I contacted Mo Austin, and he goes, yeah, Paul, I know you know all about that. Just go do it. And so I contacted the Dead organization, Hal Kant, their lawyer at the time, and I said, I want to release this thing. And so I had a meeting with Garcia. It was at the Warner Film Studios where they were finishing their live movie that they released in 78, the one with a little skeleton animation at the front of it. Oh, yeah. And he goes, Paul, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do to finish this movie. And now here you are, And so, of course, I was like, okay. I felt very excited. And we made a deal that I was going to give them $75,000 and they would give me the masters for the Harper College show. Well, like a fool, I gave them the check before I actually got the live tapes, and I never got them.
Oh, no.
I never got them.
What happened? What do you mean you didn't get them? That's all.
I called up their lawyer and I said, Hal, what? Again, I have to delete a little expletive. I said, Hal, what the heck? And he goes, well, you know how they are, Paul.
I don't know. I'd probably burn a building down.
I mean, look, you got to, in the business, you have to be tough. You can't you can't take these things personally, you know? And the thing is that I knew Garcia. I had hung out with him a number of times and we had good relations. But see, once I was working for Warner's, I think that changed his view of me. Okay. And
it became management. You weren't just like, you know, in the trenches anymore. You became management at that point.
That's exactly right. And so that's when I thought, well, I'm in big trouble now. I just gave away $75,000 of Moe's money and I got nothing to show for it. And then I thought, well, you've got to do something. You can't just go to Mo Austin and say, I just threw your money away. And so, and that's when I started to go through the vaults and put together What a Long, Strange Trip It's Been.
Wow. Well, that's a success in the end. That's
worked out for you.
Okay. Paul Wexler, now we're going to the great pivot. Okay. At some point, you went from side stage with a probably tie on to on stage. Now, when did Wexwax become a thing?
Well, I'll tell you, it started over 20 years ago, where I was no longer working in the business. I had left the business. I'd done a little management of a band down in the Carolinas. I'd booked them into over 70 shows over the course of a year and a half. And then I was like, okay, I want to do something else now, but I didn't know what to do. And I said to myself, you know, you've been running music in your head your entire life, hearing it in your head, hearing stuff from beginning to end without it actually being on the record player. I said, but you can't deliver a tune at all. And so I started on the trumpet. I had a great trumpet professor, but I couldn't make a go of it the way I wanted. And so I switched to keyboards and I got myself a $300 Yamaha. And I said, if you play this for an hour every day for the next year, you can get a better keyboard. But if you don't play it for an hour a day for the next year, just give it up. You're not serious. But I did, and I continued to play. I actually got myself about 3 years in, when I solidified my style, I got myself a weekly gig out in Western Jersey where I was living. I was playing an old folks' home, okay? I heard
about this, and I love the story because you're saying, like, they don't have a lot to look forward to.
Right.
And it's a really good place to practice music and get your set going because you're always going to get applause, you know?
And so, it was, I took them out of their misery for an hour. And the thing is that I would play this was back 17 years ago when I started. And so you have to understand there were still people in these places, in the nursing homes back then, that remembered the 40s. Okay. So I was playing a lot of music from the 40s, you know, Bob Wills and a lot of standards, you know, and early 50s, Hank Williams and Walking the Floor Over You. And see, these people in the Appalachians, Western Jersey, they knew all this country music from the 40s backwards and forwards. And also playing standards like Broadway's tunes and songs that were hits in the late 40s. You know, I saw this Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll DVD. And on the DVD, you know, with Chuck Berry and of course Keith Richards. And on the DVD, there was like an extra bit where they showed Chuck Berry going into a little studio and he plays this Broadway standard with his piano player called A Cottage for Sale. And it's a real Broadway song. Our little dream castle with every dream gone. It's like
yeah. Okay, I know the one.
About someone losing their little country shack because they're breaking up. It's a breakup song. And I thought, wait a minute, Chuck Berry, he knows these old songs before rock and roll, but of course he does. How could he have something to play before he invented rock and roll? It had to be pre-rock and roll music, and that made me determined more than ever to like really explore my roots. So that's.
I'm pretty excited to ask you this next question because I ask this to every musician, and they really don't know how to answer yet because they don't have quite the experience that you do. But what do you prefer? What's more fun to you, the production of music or actually performing it? The stage or the production room?
I can tell you, as far as pure fun goes, the live thing is fun because you're getting people excited, and that excitement flows back to you on the stage. And there's something about that you gotta love it. It's a, let's face it, it's an instant affirmation. Whereas doing a record, getting radio play, producing. I mean, look, when I'm producing someone else, it's really relatively easy. I'm like, okay, this has got to go here. This has got to go there. No, that guitar solo has to be a little different. We're gonna just change the rhythm section a little here. In other words, and then working with a vocalist. But working with yourself is like a whole other thing because I can be objective about myself, but the problem is that the ability to stand back and take a break from delivering a performance, recording, and then judging that performance, it's a bifurcation that was a completely new thing to me, and I found it challenging. I mean, the first day of cutting basics, I got home and I listened to him. I go, oh my God, everything's too fast. I was too excited.
Are you like me? Do you just like delete everything and just like, that's terrible, I got to start over?
Yeah, I got to start over. But
I get that being excited about stuff all the time. When I'm voice tracking, sometimes I get really excited, and then I listen back and I'm like, oh, that 30-second break was 10 seconds long because I'm speaking like the Micro Machines man.
Yeah, exactly. So but little by little, I managed to get some perspective on myself while I was doing it. And we cut great basics. The vocals, now the overdubs, again, where other people, when I'm overdubbing, I got no problems. It's not a problem. The vocals, I actually learned things about my singing when I was producing my own vocals, because I'm working on my vocals on this song Trembling, which is kind of like a smoky club song. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, you can sing this better if you just did it a little bit more like this. And by actually working on that song in the studio, I've changed my vocal style for the better, So it was challenging, but it was also like a chance to move forward.
And I think your actual production experience gives you that insight. I don't know if a lot of singers would be able to actually just do that. Like listen back and be like, you know what? Let's try it in this kind of style instead to see if it works.
Right.
So I think that you got the insight from both sides. I've
tried to never just fall into a warm haze about what I do, because I want to listen. Of course, I enjoy what I do and I believe in it, but I want to listen to it with somewhat of a critical ear, because I feel like that's the only way that I can advance as a musician, as someone, making music.
Okay, well, tell us about this music you've made, specifically the band you've put together. How did you find these amazing musicians? How'd you get them all in the room, especially I guess you found them over 20 years ago, but speak on that. And with the pandemic, how'd you keep everybody together and inspired?
Well, when we moved out here, I was like, I had bookings in New York. I mean, they're not giant doings, but I was playing with a lot of good musicians, both in my own outfit and other people's outfits. And then when this family thing came up, I was like, okay, I'm putting family first. Now, I know this sounds weird, but I see myself as a person first. And so we did move out here. And immediately I started looking for musicians. And there used to be this place in Berkeley where they would it was basically a pizza joint, but they would open their doors and have great musicians play twice a week, and people would gather around outside on the sidewalks, and whoever booked these bands was extraordinarily insightful. And so I just kept going there, and I found my bass player and my drummer, Alex Baum and on bass and Robbie Bean on drums. Now, Alex has been a journeyman musician for a long time. He's got jazz knowledge and jazz chops, but he's played with a lot of different kinds of musicians. He was in Dan Hicks' band, Dan Hicks and the Hot Licks. And it was in his live band. And my drummer, Robbie, is just a very busy working musician, a very solid drummer. Now, the lead guitar player that I used on the single, "We're Going for a Ride," Peter Harris, he was in a version of Quicksilver after John Cipollina passed. And so I was like, okay, I want this guy because I have a lot of San Francisco in my DNA. And I used him, and that's how that single came out. Now, on a lot of stuff, I use a saxophone player from New York, Chris Bencio, who is in the Uptown Horns. Of course, the Uptown Horns toured with the Stones on the Steel Wheels tour. Mm-hmm. I mean, his CV, the number of great bands that he's played with, it's crazy, you know, and he's a brilliant guy who has jazz chops, but really plays like a great R&B jump blues kind of sax, which is what I require, you know, in my sound. And then different rhythm guitar players, two from New York, one named Jason Goodrow. His father was Gary Goodrow from the Committee, and then Billy Pigeon, a very blues-oriented guitar player, and then other musicians that I've been in touch with over the years. A guitar player from down in North Carolina. He was in a jam band that, like I say, I managed for a while, and I used him on one of the cuts, and basically I managed to pull in different talent on the ballad song, "Voices from the Harbor," which is a very atmospheric song that I'm very proud of. There's a great Volker Getz, a great trumpet player, a very advanced musician, plays the solo on that one. So I managed to pull in musicians from like different areas of the country that I've worked with over the years.
So with all of these guys that have all of this great experience, years of experience, lots of good chops, how do all of your live shows not just devolve into like a 90-minute jam? Like one song, 90 minutes long, just going for it.
Because I'm a song guy, and I believe that I could do what you're saying. I could bring a lot of soloists in, but I don't tend to do that. Okay, the lineup when I'm going to play New York, my next show, is just drum, bass, rhythm guitar, piano, and saxophone. You know, because I want the song to be showcased. I want my vocal to be the primary thing. And then I want there to be a really exciting music break in every song where the song takes off. And it takes off for maybe 16 bars, you know, maybe a little longer. But I don't want the jam to become the primary thing because my emphasis, again, is on my songwriting, which I feel is one of my strongest suits. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, Paul, I'm so excited about everything that you have going on and all of these upcoming dates. You have something going on in New York. You're playing that venue.
Yes, on June 10th, we'll be at the Map Room at the Bowery Electric.
Man, I'm going to miss you by a week. I'm going to be in New York June 1st to 4th. Man.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I know, me too. What about West Coast?
You know, I don't have anything booked, but I'm going to try to put something together for the next few months, doing something, I think, in the Bay Area. So we'll see what happens.
Nice.
All right, Paul Wexler's Wexwax. It's new. There's a new single out. It's called "We're Going for a Ride." The album is called "Swept Away." It's available now, right? It's out now.
Yes, it is. I mean, you can get it through almost any streaming service. The name Wexwax is broken on the streaming. If you look under Wexwax, you can get Apple. Anywhere it's available, you know, Spotify, all of them. You can also go to Bandcamp if you actually want to own one of them. and it's available for download. Because I made a decision that CDs are sort of not that relevant anymore, and so on this record, I did not make a CD.
Yeah, but go to Bandcamp because we like Bandcamp. Bandcamp's a great site. They have good stuff and they do support the artists. So I would recommend Bandcamp.
Yes.
All right. Final question, Paul Wexler. Thanks for being on the show tonight. And
it's my pleasure, Ben.
Here we go. Would you rather get into a battle to the death with 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? A battle to the death. Paul Wexler.
You know, there used to be a place on Long Island on the way out to Hamptons called the Big Duck. That was a building in the shape of a duck that they sold ducks. Okay. And I think I would rather battle the duck-sized horses.
Now, is there any reason why, or it's just...
Because I think, I think I would be more afraid of a giant duck than a bunch of little.
It is terrifying.
You know, a lot of people say they'll go for the big giant duck because the whole band can take them at once, and 100 of anything is scary. But you're going the other way. I like it, Paul. I think you could, little things are easy to get anyway. All right. Well, Paul, thanks for coming on the program, and great success, and we'll have you on again, I hope.
Well, Barry, thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be part of KCSN, and I really do appreciate it.
Now, we're going to play this song, Swept Away. Can you tell us a little about it as we get into the song?
You're going to play Swept Away, not the single? Okay.
Oh, no. Let me say that again. We're going to play the single, We're Going for a Ride. Can you
I can tell you some stuff about We're Going for a Ride.
Okay.
I was trying to write a song about COVID, something that was post-apocalyptic. And I imagined a place where society has fallen apart a bit, and that we were driving through basically a society that was not completely functioning, where there were a lot of broken machines that were just all over the landscape, and where people didn't really know how to act anymore. And in the bridge, I say a temporary problem needs a permanent solution. And in the end, there'll be no fear. So as I was trying to deal with, just the wrenching changes that we were all going through at that time.
Paul Wexler, everyone. Thank you. Here comes We're Going for a Ride.
down.